Thank you so much for all your incredible love and support. If you enjoyed this story and want to experience more spine-chilling tales, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a frightful new video. I was scrolling through Facebook, liking posts and leaving comments like usual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until my best friend Sarah texted me asking why I'd posted such a mean comment about our math teacher. I was confused. I hadn't posted anything about our math teacher. When I checked my profile, my heart dropped. There it was, a nasty post about Mr. Johnson that I definitely didn't write. I quickly deleted it and changed my password, figuring my account must have gotten hacked somehow. I messaged Sarah to explain what happened, but that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, more posts appeared that I didn't write. Rude comments on people's photos, embarrassing status updates, even private messages sent to my friends saying hurtful things. No matter how many times I changed my password or enabled two-factor authentication, I couldn't stop it. My friends started avoiding me at school in the hallway about how I'd changed and become such a jerk online. I tried to explain that I was hacked, but most people didn't believe me. They thought I was just making excuses for my bad behavior. Even my parents were upset with me. They saw some of the posts and couldn't understand why I was acting out like this online. I felt so helpless and alone. No one believed that it wasn't really me behind those awful posts and messages. I became paranoid about using any technology. Was the hacker watching everything I did online? How were they bypassing all the security measures I put in place? I started to feel like I was going crazy. In desperation, I decided to do some digging. I looked through old messages and posts, trying to find any clues about who might be behind this. That's when I noticed something odd. Some of the language the hacker used reminded me of someone I used to know, an old friend from middle school named Jake, who I'd had a falling out with years ago. Jake and I had been close until an incident in 8th grade. And I ended up accidentally getting him in trouble. He'd always blamed me for ruining his reputation at school. We hadn't spoken since then, but was it possible he was still holding a grudge after all this time? I started paying more attention to the posts the hacker was making. There were little details that seemed to reference things only Jake would know about. Inside jokes we used to have. It had to be him. But how could I prove it? And more importantly, how could I stop him? He clearly knew his way around computers and hacking. I was way out of my league trying to fight back technically. I considered going to the police, but I wasn't sure they'd take me seriously. It would be my word against Jake's, and I had no solid proof it was him. Plus, I was worried involving law enforcement might make Jake escalate things even further. So I came up with a plan. I decided to fight fire with fire, well, sort of. Online persona and started interacting with Jake's accounts. I carefully crafted a story about being a fellow hacker impressed by his skills. Over time, I gained his trust and got him talking about his exploits. It took weeks of patience, but eventually Jake slipped up. He bragged about how he was ruining some girl's life by hacking her Facebook. He didn't use my name, but the details matched perfectly. I had him. I saved all our conversations and took screenshots of everything. Then I revealed who I really was and confronted Jake. I told him I had proof of what he'd done and I wasn't afraid to use it. At first, he tried to deny everything. But when I showed him some of the evidence I had, he realized he was caught. Jake finally admitted to hacking my account and agreed to stop. He even wrote an apology that I could share to help clear my name. It took time, but slowly things got better. I was able to explain to my friends and family what really happened. Most of them believed me once they saw Jake's confession. I completely locked down my social media accounts and changed all my passwords. The whole ordeal left me shaken. I'm still nervous every time I post something online, wondering if it's really secure. But I also learned a lot about the power of persistence and thinking outside the box to solve problems. Sometimes you have to get creative to outsmart someone who's trying to hurt you. These days I'm a lot more careful about what I share online and who I trust with my information. The experience opened my eyes to how vulnerable we all are in the digital world, but it also showed me that with determination and some clever thinking, it's possible to take back control of your online identity. I hope my story can serve as a warning to others. Be careful what you post, keep your accounts secure, and always trust your instincts if something seems off. And remember, if you find yourself in a situation like mine, don't give up. There's always a way to fight back and reclaim your digital life. I was scrolling through Facebook late one night when I should have been sleeping. You know how it goes. Just one more video, one more post. That's when I saw it. A weird video titled, "Watch If You Dare" popped up in my feed. The thumbnail was blurry, but I could make out a woman's face. She looked scared. I probably should have kept scrolling, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked play. The video was grainy and dark. A woman with long black hair stood in what looked like an old basement. She was chanting something in a language I didn't understand. Her eyes were wide, and she kept glancing off camera like something was there. It was creepy, but nothing too crazy. The video ended after about a minute. I shrugged it off and went to bed, figuring it was just some low-budget horror thing. The next day, things started getting weird. My Facebook feed was full of violent images, car crashes, crime scenes, stuff like that. At first I thought maybe there was a glitch or something. Posts kept coming. That night, I had the worst nightmare of my life. I was trapped in that basement from the video. The woman was there, still chanting, but now I could see what she was looking at, some kind of monster lurking in the shadows. I woke up in a cold sweat. The nightmares continued for days, each one worse than the last, and my Facebook feed just got more and more disturbing. Posts about murders, accidents, disasters. It was like the algorithm was force-feeding me the worst news possible. I tried to distract myself, but the images haunted me even when I was awake. I'd zone out at work and see flashes of blood and violence. Sleep became almost impossible. About a week after watching the video, I got a message from my friend Jake. He wanted to know why I'd sent him some weird video. My heart sank. I never sent him anything. More messages started coming in. All my Facebook friends were asking about this creepy video I'd supposedly shared. I felt sick. Somehow the cursed video had spread from my account without me doing anything. I started researching, trying to find out if anyone else had experienced this. There were a few posts on Reddit from people describing similar things. A cursed video, violent images, nightmares. But most of the accounts just stopped posting after a while. I was terrified of what might happen if I didn't break this curse soon. Would I go insane from lack of sleep? Would I start seeing the horrors in real life? I tried everything I could think of. I deleted the Facebook app, but the images showed up on other social media. I factory reset my phone, but they came back as soon as I logged in anywhere. I even tried smashing my phone, but the nightmares continued. In desperation, I drove out to a cabin with no internet. For a few blissful hours, I thought maybe I'd escaped, but then I got a text from my mom asking about that scary video I sent her. My blood ran cold. There was nothing. I started losing track of time. Days blurred together in a haze of violent imagery and sleepless nights. I could barely function. My friends were worried, but I was too scared to tell them what was really going on. What if it spread to them too? Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I got a message from a stranger. They said they knew how to break the curse. I was skeptical, but desperate enough to try anything. The stranger said I had to find the original video and destroy it. Not just delete it, actually destroy the device it was on. It sounded crazy, but I had to try. I spent days combing through my Facebook history, trying to find where that first video came from. Finally, I traced it back to an old account that had been deactivated right after posting the video. Using some tricks I'm not proud of, I managed to get the account owner's real name and address. It led me to an abandoned house on the edge of town. Been lived in for years. I broke in through a basement window. The smell of mold and decay was overwhelming. In the corner was an ancient desktop computer covered in cobwebs. My hands shook as I plugged it in and turned it on. There it was, the original video file. I watched it one last time and noticed something I missed before. In the last frame, just for a split second, you could see the woman's eyes change. They turned completely black. I yanked out the hard drive and smashed it to pieces with a hammer I'd brought. For good measure, I poured lighter fluid on the whole computer and set it on fire. I got out of there fast. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. When I woke up, my Facebook feed was back to normal. No more violent images, no more nightmares. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that woman's chanting. And when I close my eyes, I see those pitch black eyes staring back at me. I don't use social media much these days. I got the friend request. I was scrolling through Facebook, half asleep, when I saw the notification. My heart skipped a beat when I read the name, Jake Thompson. But that couldn't be right. Jake died 5 years ago in a car crash. I figured it must be some sick joke. Maybe someone hacked his old account or made a fake profile. Either way, I wasn't having it. I ignored the request and tried to put it out of my mind. But the next day, I got a message from Jake's account. It mentioned an inside joke from our college days that only he would know. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was getting creepy. I messaged back asking who was really behind this. The reply came instantly. "It's me, Jake. I need your help." I slammed my laptop shut. This was too much. I told myself it had to be a hacker who'd gotten access to Jake's old messages somehow. But a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. They referenced memories and secrets only Jake and I shared. Things we'd never told anyone else. It was like he was right there, talking to me again. I tried blocking the account, but it didn't work. Jake's profile picture would pop up in my feed, or I'd get tagged in a post. It was like he was haunting my Facebook. Then things got really weird. Jake's account started uploading photos I'd never seen before. They showed us hanging out in places we'd never been. In some, Jake looked older than when he died. It was like glimpses of a life that never happened. The captions were even stranger. They'd say things like, "Remember this night? You have to go back there." Or, "The truth is hidden where we took this photo." I barely slept. I couldn't focus at work. Every notification made me jump. Was I losing my mind? Or was Jake's ghost really trying to tell me something? I dug out Jake's old phone number and called it, half expecting to hear his voice. But it was disconnected. I even his old house, but new people lived there now. The messages grew more urgent. Jake's account begged me to investigate his death. He insisted it wasn't an accident like everyone thought. I didn't want to believe it, but doubt was creeping in. I started looking into the crash. The police report was pretty cut and dry. Jake had been drinking, lost control on a sharp turn, and hit a tree, but his messages claimed there was more to the story. Following the clues in his posts, I visited the crash site. It was on a lonely stretch of road outside town. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, but then I noticed something glinting in the weeds. It was Jake's old pocket watch, the one his grandpa gave him that he always carried. The report said all his belongings were accounted for at the scene. So how did this get here? The watch had stopped at 11:17. According to the report, the crash happened just after midnight. Things weren't adding up. I took his sister, the only family he had left in town. She was shocked to see it. Apparently, it had gone missing the night Jake died. This was the first time it had turned up. Jake's sister admitted she'd always had doubts about the crash. Jake hardly ever drank, and he knew that road like the back of his hand. It never made sense that he'd lose control there. The Facebook messages led me to more clues. A receipt from a gas station the night Jake died, security camera footage that showed him arguing with someone in a black car. Bit by bit, a new picture emerged. Jake had stumbled onto something bad. Someone powerful wanted him silenced. The crash was staged to cover up what really happened. As I uncovered more of the truth, the Facebook messages changed. Jake's account started posting old photos and memories. Happy times we'd shared. It was like he was saying goodbye. The final message was simple: "Thank you for listening. I can rest now." After that, Jake's account went quiet. I was scrolling through Facebook, mindlessly killing time before bed, when I got a notification. Someone had tagged me in a photo. Nothing unusual there, except when I clicked on it, I froze. The picture showed me as a teenager, maybe 15 or 16, standing in front of my old high school. But I didn't remember this photo being taken. I didn't even remember that day. I shrugged it off at first. Maybe it was just an old picture a friend had found and decided to share. But then another notification popped up. And another. More photos of me, from different times in my life. Me at college graduation. Me on a hiking trip I vaguely recalled from years ago. Me at a random street corner I didn't recognize. The weird thing was, I knew I hadn't uploaded these photos. I'm not big on social media, and I rarely post anything, let alone old pictures. I started to feel uneasy. Who was posting these? How did they get them? I checked the profile of the person tagging me, but it was blank. No picture, no information. Just a username that looked like a random string of numbers and letters. I tried to report the profile, but Facebook said they couldn't find anything wrong with it. I messaged their support team, explaining the situation, but they just said they couldn't see any unusual activity on my account. By this point, I was freaking out a little. I stayed up late that night going through all the photos. There were dozens of them now, spanning from my teenage years to just a few months ago. Some of them I sort of remembered, like being at certain events or places. But I had no memory of these specific moments being captured. It was like someone had been following me, documenting my life without me knowing. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, watching as more photos appeared. My coworkers noticed something was off, but I brushed off their concerns. How could I explain this? It sounded crazy even to me. I decided to take a closer look at the photos. I started noting down the locations, trying to see if there was a pattern. That's when things got even weirder. I recognized one of the street corners in a photo. It had been in the news recently. A woman had gone missing there a few months back. My heart started racing as I checked more photos. Another location matched up with a missing person case from last year, and another from 2 years ago. This couldn't be a coincidence. Whoever was posting these photos wasn't just stalking me. They were connected to these disappearances somehow. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? That someone was posting old photos of me on Facebook? That I thought it was connected to missing persons cases? They'd think I was nuts. I became obsessed with solving this mystery. I started spending all my free time researching the missing persons cases, trying to find connections. I created a map of all the locations from the photos, looking for patterns. I was withdrawing from everyone, canceling plans, not returning calls. But I couldn't tell them what was really going on. They wouldn't understand. Weeks passed, and the photos kept coming. I barely slept, jumping every time my phone buzzed with a new notification. I started seeing the mysterious photographer everywhere I went, jumping at shadows and eyeing strangers suspiciously. Then, one day, a photo appeared that chilled me to my core. It was me, asleep in my bed, taken just the night before. They had been in my house, while I was sleeping. That was the final straw. I packed a bag and left town that night, not telling anyone where I was going. I needed to disappear, to figure this out without putting anyone else in danger. I'm writing this from a small motel room in a town I'd rather not name. I don't know who's behind this or what they want, but I know I can't run forever. Sooner or later, I'll have to face whoever is doing this. The notifications have stopped for now, but I know it's not over. I check Facebook compulsively, both dreading and hoping for a new photo to appear. Some clue that might help me understand what's happening. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know I can't go back to my old life until I figure this out, until I know why I was chosen and what it all means. So if you're reading this and you've experienced anything similar, please reach out. And if you haven't, well, maybe think twice the next time you get a notification that you've been tagged in a photo. You never know who might be watching. I never thought I'd have to relive those memories. It's been years since Jake and I broke up, and I've moved on with my life. Or so I thought. It started with a notification on my phone. I was scrolling through Facebook, killing time during my lunch break, when I saw it. A comment on an old post. Curious, I tapped on it. The post was from 5 years ago, around the time Jake and I were together. But I didn't remember writing it. The words stared back at me, unfamiliar and unsettling. I know what happened that night. I can't keep this secret anymore. It's eating me alive. My heart started racing. What secret? What night? I scrolled through the comments, hoping for some context, but there was nothing. Just this new comment from a random account. Remember? A chill ran down my spine. I closed the app and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to that post. By the time I got home, I couldn't resist anymore. I logged onto Facebook on my laptop and started digging through my old posts. At first, everything seemed normal. Pictures of nights out with friends, silly memes, the usual stuff. But as I went further back, I started noticing things. Little comments here and there that didn't make sense. Vague references to feeling scared or guilty. Posts about not being able to sleep, about nightmares. I felt like I was reading someone else's life. These posts didn't fit with my memories of that time. Jake and I had our issues, sure, but nothing that would explain this. As I kept scrolling, the posts got darker, more cryptic. I found one that made my blood run cold. I can still hear the screams. I close my eyes and I'm back there. I can't escape it. What screams? Where was there? I racked my brain trying to remember, but it was like hitting a wall. The memories weren't there. I stayed up all night, reading through old posts, trying to piece together what happened. By morning, I had a timeline of sorts, but it still didn't make sense. Things I couldn't explain. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I couldn't focus at work. I barely ate. Every free moment was spent on Facebook, looking for more clues, and slowly, fragments of memories started coming back. Flashes of a dark room, the smell of damp earth, a feeling of absolute terror. But they were just snippets, nothing concrete. I started having nightmares. In them, I was always running, always scared. Sometimes I heard Jake's voice, calling my name. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding. A week after that first notification, I saw a post from a local news page. Jake was back in town. He'd moved away after our breakup, but now he was here again. The article was about some charity event he was organizing, but all I could focus on was his face in the photo. He looked exactly the same. That night, I had the worst nightmare yet. In it, I was in a basement. Jake was there, smiling at me. But wasn't a kind smile. Eyes. They were cold, empty. He was holding something in his hand. A knife. I woke up before I could see what happened next. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face people. Instead, I drove out to the old house Jake and I had shared. It had been sold years ago, but I'd parked across the street and just stared at it. As I sat there, more memories started flooding back. I remembered fights, not just normal couple arguments, but screaming matches. Things being thrown. Jake's face, contorted with rage. I remembered being afraid all the time. And then I remembered the basement. The night it all went wrong. I couldn't recall all the details, but I knew something terrible had happened down there. Something I'd been trying to forget for years. I drove home in a daze. My head was pounding. I felt sick to my stomach. When I got back to my apartment, I went straight to my laptop and opened Facebook again. I scrolled back to those old posts, reading them with new eyes. Here, the guilt. I knew what the secret was. For a moment, I considered deleting everything, erasing all evidence of that time. But something stopped me, a nagging feeling that I needed to face this, to deal with it once and for all. I spent the next few days writing down everything I could remember. It was painful, like ripping off a scab and letting the wound bleed again. But with each memory I recovered, I felt a little stronger, a little more in control. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let Jake get away with what he'd done, but I was scared. What if no one believed me? What if he came after me again? In the end, I decided to start small. I reached out to an old friend, someone who'd known Jake and me back then. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was remembering some troubling things from that time and needed to talk. We met for coffee. At first I was nervous, stumbling over my words, but as I started talking, it all came pouring out. Her face growing more and more concerned. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She believed me. That was the turning point. Knowing I had someone on my side gave me the courage to take the next step. I made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in trauma and repressed memories. I also reached out to a lawyer to discuss my options. It's been a few weeks since that first notification. I'm still piecing things together, still working through the memories. Some days are harder than others, but I'm not afraid anymore. I know the truth now, and I'm ready to face it. Jake is still in town. I see his name in the local news sometimes. But now when I look at his picture, I don't see the man I thought I loved. I see him for what he really is, and I know that no matter what happens next, I'm stronger than he is. I survived once and I'll survive again. That forgotten post was just the beginning. Now I'm writing my own story. And this time, I'm in control.